Welcome to this webinar. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you taking the time. It is not taken for granted given how busy all our lives are nowadays. So I really do feel the responsibility to deliver something for you, and we have a few bonuses for you at the end. Please put everything away now: phone, messenger, Skype, text, and whatever else could distract you. And this is what you'll get. I'll walk you through all of these in detail. The 4 ingredients that you absolutely need to succeed in any big change that is worth making. A good overview over our detailed system on how to approach a job or career change, which can give you a roadmap to follow. An explanation of how the 4 vital ingredients fit in with the system. A few stories to illustrate these points. And free bonuses for sticking around to the end. So for any questions, you can always email us with any questions you may have, and we will endeavor to get back to you within 48 hours. Let me tell you a little bit about myself so you know what my background is. That is less so I can show off to you, but more that you can gauge what my past experience is and in how far you think it is useful, and why I think that I may have some ideas about change. So presently, in the past, I was a director of a number of companies, including Change Implementation Management Limited and Network Rail CP Finance, a subsidiary of Network Rail. I implemented change and consulted in multinational companies that made billions in sales for over 10 years, including companies like Goldman Sachs, Credit Suisse, Morgan Stanley, and SocGen. Personally, I transformed and reinvented myself successfully multiple times in the last 20 years of my working life. Sometimes I made 2 or 3 times more money after the change than before, even though it was put upon me and not something I chose. I worked or consulted in industries as diverse as investment banking, the charity sector, entertainment, hospitality, the government, and the army in the US and the UK and in Canada. Not all of them everywhere, obviously, but some of them in each one of these countries. So why am I doing this? This is really something where I can help people, and where I can help people with the situation that's coming up. So I think I do have a few things that I can pass on to people. And one of the things that I can say is it is always scary. You never know what's going to happen. There's no guarantees ever. One of the things that I really do have to offer is all these things that you shouldn't do. I wish somebody had told me in the beginning. But if you have a certain system, then you have so much more chances to get to the other side unscathed. So I'm watching this conference with Peter Diamandis and Tony Robbins, and they're talking about how they are so concerned about all these workers losing their jobs because of digitalization and globalization and automation. And a lot of these people have never done anything else before. They've done the same job for 10, 20, 30 years and have never had to work themselves into anything else. And all of a sudden, everything goes away, right? And then it struck me, this is actually something that I'm uniquely qualified to deal with. Because it's happened to me so many times that due to some external circumstance that I had absolutely no control over, I had to find a new way to make a living. And I had to find a new way in somehow. I mean, these were circumstances like loss of a visa, for example, or a writer's strike for a year, or federal versus local politics, or simply local politics. And there was nothing I could do about it. I just had to find a way forward because I've got a system now. You know, every time I have to work myself into a new job, I have a system. I mean, how many people really love their job nowadays? How many people wake up on Monday morning and think, oh, great, I can go to work again? You know, probably not quite that many. And the point is that with all these job changes, once you're, you know, in your 40s or maybe even in your 50s, you're much more aware of who you are and what you really want to do. Because when you're in your 20s, it happens a lot of times that you do what other people want you to do, what your parents want you to do, what they expect from you, or what you think they expect from you. It may not be the exact job, but they may have some sort of idea that you should go to university or that you should make a certain amount of money, for example. Or there are simply pressures of life, and you don't have any other training. So you may not have the ability to do the job yet that you're really meant to do because you don't have the background yet. If you take a look at all the things that are beautiful, all the things that come your way that you couldn't necessarily expect. I had such a feeling of accomplishment afterwards. I flew home. I mean, I was sitting in the car, I was whooping, I was singing, and I thought, this is it. And this is what you sometimes have, you know, even if initially it's, you know, it doesn't go the way that you think. But if you're doing the right thing, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, what you're meant to do, something inside you knows. And something inside you sings. I mean, it was beautiful. You can make a difference by being Martin Luther King, or by being Nelson Mandela. Or you can make a difference by being the school teacher who put them on their path. The school teacher is not going to be the one who's going to be famous, but who says that history would be the same if she hadn't been there. You never know what you put into motion. It can be good or bad, you cannot control it, but only because you're not famous, only because you're not rich, doesn't mean that your life didn't have a purpose. If you're open to it, if you're open to doing the right thing, to doing good, to standing up for the right thing, then amazing things can happen. Sometimes you will know, sometimes you won't. It is the experiences and the relationships that you have on the way that really make you think, oh my God, this was really beautiful. This was really something that I wouldn't have wanted to have my life without. And especially if you made a difference for someone. Quite a few times it was actually very lucky, especially that time in Netheravon where I got stuck on that muck heap with a caravan and my pets. It was the most beautiful accident of my life because I was stuck there. I was parachuting for 9 months. I was writing a book and I was surrounded by all these animals that I loved. It was one of the nicest years ever, really. And that was all because there was a hang-up with a visa. So I had to stay there. I didn't have a choice. And my landlady was very nice. You know, I still visited her for, I think, like 10 years afterwards. Just showed up and occasionally did a little bit and helped her a little bit and everything. It was a beautiful year. It was really nice. So a lot of times if something happens, it's really about the journey. And that's how I understood what people mean when they say it's about the journey. Because it really is. Nowadays, all these new technologies that are coming up, they are actually helping the environment. They're actually cleaning up the environment. There's so much technology out there now that can help us save the planet. And if you're trying to find a new job for somebody and they have some sort of skills in that area, you can just as well find them a job that is really good for the environment, is really good for them, and makes them feel good because they know that they're doing something really important. That is the beauty of this time that we're in. There are so many opportunities out there. If you are a really creative person, there is so much out there for you. And there are so many more customers that are coming online as well. There are billions of customers that are coming online in the next few years who will be connected online in the next few years and who all want to buy something. So I'm getting really excited when I look at these things, and I'm plugged into a few of these networks where they're saying, you know, what the future holds. And, you know, it can be scary, but there's also some real opportunities out there. So the future is beautiful if you make it so. But what you have to do is you have to get off your BUT in order to do it, because it will not come to you. You have to get out there. And as most actors say, 80% of life is showing up and looking for the opportunities out there.
Change sounds like a dry subject to a lot of people, but oh my God, can it make the difference in your life? A little switch of perspective in your mind and all of a sudden new worlds open up to you. Possibilities you never thought you had, and life switches from routine, maybe even depressing routine, to something you can genuinely get excited about, something that makes you smile and laugh for no good reason, with eureka moments in the middle of lunch or in the middle of the night when you jump out of bed at 2 a.m., not because you're too stressed to sleep, but because you're so excited about an idea you need to write it down before it goes away, and it just cannot wait until morning. Something where you work in a great team with everyone working together, or renewed energy, or just the time to have some fun. And if you haven't got that already, that's what we want to help you find. It is a journey and not always an easy one. You will hit obstacles along the way, and there are times when you want to give up. But if you stick with it and you're determined, the rewards can be astounding. And even if you don't end up exactly where you want to go, the journey alone, the growth you experience by expanding yourself, will make it worthwhile. So let's get started. I'll give you the 4 ingredients of successful change, and these 4 ingredients may be something you have heard before. But unlike what you usually get in these types of webinars, I will also give you how they fit into the larger system so that you can apply them to any change you want to make, and also the method of how to get there. especially if the change you want to make requires learning new tools and strategies to succeed. We also have some bonus free webinar links at the end to illustrate 3 of the 4 ingredients in a bit more detail. The first ingredient is the decision. Every change starts with a decision. Sometimes the trick is how to get there, and that is what we will address later, but you gotta make a decision. But a lot of people don't. Why not? Sometimes it is fear, but sometimes it is also simply because they don't know how to go about initiating that change, so they do nothing. But doing nothing is a decision too, and sometimes it is more dire in the long run not to make a decision than any radical change could have been. In one of the bonus videos at the end, I will show you what I mean. The video is about 7 minutes long and it gets a bit dramatic in between, but sometimes that is necessary to make a point, because we don't want to make the same mistake. And I promise you, it gets fun at the end, and all exciting on the next slide. Watch the video and ask yourself, how young do these people in the second part feel? How alive do they feel? Would you like to be a warning or an example? Who would you like to be with? What else do you need to make a successful change? You need to commit. And that usually means you have to at least schedule it. Now, is a decision and a commitment enough? Well, let's see. I've done it. And it was really cool. So this was exciting and it got me somewhere. But you know what? It didn't get me anywhere where I really wanted to go. I mean, it is exciting. You can kind of figure out new ways of how to live your life and, see everything that's out there. But at some point, what else do you need for a successful job change? A job change that you actually end up in the direction where you actually want to be. We need a plan or a map. And what do you need for a plan? You need to know where you are, where you want to go, and how to get there. Because without a plan and a long-term map, you diffuse your energies. You get pulled into 10 different directions and never get where you want to go. And what's worse, when the going gets tough, you cannot see anymore where you're going, and you lose your way. That's usually when people give up, because they cannot see anymore how they can possibly get to their goal. Change can be a scary thing, and sometimes you need a compass, some systems to show you where you are and where the direction is that you need to go into. Otherwise, you cannot find your way. I used to go scuba diving in a pitch black lake, and we dived at a 100-yard deep wall, and if you dived away from the wall or you dived at a deep wreck and you had to come up again, you would have no reference points, whether you would go up or down and how fast you were going, especially once your ears were used to diving and that they adjusted to the pressure differentiation automatically. So all you had was this little thing on your wrist that told you that you were going up or down and how fast you were going, so you wouldn't speed up to the surface without a safety stop, which would basically kill you. If you go cave diving, you have a piece of string with you to show you the way back, just in case you lose orientation, because you don't want to get stuck in a cave somewhere and not find your way out when you run out of air. That is what you need when things get tense, because sometimes they will get tense. And your plan will be all you have to orient yourself by, because your mind will just be overwhelmed by the changes and the pressure. That's where the wheat is differentiated from the chaff. That's where excellence shows itself. Give yourself the best chance possible to get there. Don't be too afraid to vary your map on occasion and be flexible, and that is also something we go into in the seminar, but do have one, do have a map, and do have a plan. So, what is the last ingredient? Determination. The will to keep going no matter what. Now, how do you get that determination? Well, you may just be pig-headed and stubborn, but most people need a bigger reason than just themselves and their own self-interest. Otherwise, they give up when things get too tough. However, if you have something bigger than yourself that you're serving and contributing to, then you'll stick with the plan even if it gets really hard. Tony Robbins quotes Martin Luther King, who is said to have said that any man who doesn't have something to die for isn't fit to live. You may hold this to be true or not, but one thing is for certain. Most people will keep going to keep their children safe, to protect their community, to preserve history, to finish the movie, to save the whale, or to protect the environment, or whatever it is for you, long after they would have gone home and gone to bed if it had just been for themselves. Now, these 4 ingredients are really what you need. But for most people, it is also helpful to have a bit more than that and to not fly completely blind into the unknown. A decision is nice, but a decision to do what? How do you get to that decision? What does a commitment look like? How do you construct a map or a plan? What do you need to take into account? And what does that determination look like in practice? As it happens, for some reason or other, mostly due to changes out of my control, like I mentioned before, loss of a visa, a year-long strike, or even now Brexit, I found myself in a situation several times that I had to change jobs or even professions very suddenly. And looking back on it, I found that I had actually developed a system on how to do that. A system that bears close resemblance to what I learned at university, because at university I did not learn a job. I learned how to learn. How to work myself into things. See, I was trained originally as a judge. And in the country where I graduated, a judge did not necessarily have the ability to simply go to somebody more senior to ask for advice on a case. And there was no budget for outside counsel in matters of law. And moreover, after graduation, the graduate could be assigned anywhere by the state, criminal law, administrative law, or civil law, with everything that fell under these fields except tax. And that is pretty much all of human behavior. So it was impossible to predict what a graduate would need to know and which aspect of law he or she would need to understand. So we were taught instead how to teach ourselves, how to work ourselves into materials that we had never seen before and apply laws that we had never read before, and apply them correctly. And only those who could demonstrate that they could do this passed each of the 2 exams. Working yourself into a new job or career is no different, except that there is a practical component beyond the exam. So what we learned at university worked with a couple of modifications. So this is what the Design Your Future system looks like. It is embedded in the vision for your life and the mission in your life, and it has heart and emotion at its core, because without emotion, you will not have the energy and joy to reward you for your successes. And around the core of the heart are the 6 different stages that all successful job or career changes tend to go through. In some of these cases, these can be very short stages. In others, each stage can take months or even years, depending on how much time you have, and it is an endless cycle. Each of these stages also has sub-stages. We have given the sub-stages handy acronyms, or named all of these sub-stages with the same letter, to make it easier to remember. It is predicted that we will all need to change jobs and careers much more often and much faster in future. So this is a system that we may use again and again and again. The acronyms make sure that we do not forget one of the vital components. To just go over the 6 stages real quick, this is what they are. So what was the first E? Do you remember from the last slide? Let me give you a hint. If you do this, you may make 2 or 3 times the money after the change than you made before. You may be happier than ever before, and you may be able to get the job of your dreams. If you don't do this, you may get stuck or go bankrupt. What do I mean? Explore. Explore your options and explore them thoroughly. And there is a system to that, different steps to go through. And if you leave one of them out, it could have dire consequences for your future. Why? Well, if you don't do this, you will probably get a worse job than before. You may choose a job that may go away again very soon. You may even go bankrupt, and what's worse, if you miss out one of these particular steps, you may never get over what happened. That external thing that made you lose your job, and you will feel like a victim forever. Sounds dire, doesn't it? So, we teach our students the tool we developed for this stage to avoid this. We call it the Arrive at Yourself tool, and I'll get into that a bit later. The second E. What happens if you do this? Well, you get a certain amount of certainty about the future that will give you drive and momentum. You learn what works and what doesn't work. You may save yourselves months or years of failure. What happens if you don't do this? You spend loads of time and money on training or a product that won't make you a dime. What do I mean? Experiment and research. Why? Well, you may get a great idea in your exploration phase, and there in that exploration phase you don't want to limit yourself. But now you need to find out whether it's viable. You may need to investigate the likely future of your next profession. For instance, your change may not be radical enough. Say, if you're a truck driver who is about to lose his job due to automation, you may want to choose something else than being an Uber driver in your next profession, because Ubers will be automated as well. Or if you have always been interested in energy, oil may not be the industry you may want to seek for your future. For starters, the cost of the upkeep of platforms and infrastructure in the oil industry is massive versus solar, where you just need to build your plant and that's pretty much it. And that means solar is much more efficient to run, not to mention the environmental impact. So you may want to invest into an industry that has future, rather than one that runs out of one. An experiment: if you have a company and want to launch a new product, you don't want to put all your energies into developing something that will never work, because nobody wants it. There are techniques on how to research and experiment most effectively, and in our training we will teach you how to do that. That is what the MUST stands for. What would happen if you do this? You'll know what you're doing, or at least you have a good idea. You know you've done all you can to prepare, so you can give this your all with maximum confidence. What would happen without this? You'll feel like a fake. You know you're not supposed to be there, and everybody will feel it. And you have chosen something that is even slightly challenging for you, you will fail. What? Education. Education for yourself and others. Why? Can't you just wait until your new boss tells you what to do? No. It may have worked like this in the past, at least in some industries and in some countries, but nowadays employers are looking for people who can hit the ground running. You may not even be able to get into the job, even if you don't need a qualification, if you cannot demonstrate in the interview that you have a good idea of what you're doing. You'll also be much happier in your first few days and weeks if you know what you're doing. I've got a few examples for that. You may not care too much in your current job, you may even be used to being able to complain that you haven't been trained properly, but would you really want to lose out against someone else only because they were prepared and you weren't? If it was your dream job, and maybe you would only have one chance at success. The fourth E, remember which one this was? Let's give you a hint again. What would happen if you do this? Well, things will happen. You will take the first step, you will know where to go, and if you get lost in the middle, you will find your way back again. What would happen if you don't do this? You will likely fail, especially if things get tough. What do I mean? Engage, make a map, prioritize. Why? To give you direction, accountability, keep you on track, and keep you going when you doubt and become afraid and can't see the next step anymore. Because sometimes when you're really scared, and change will mean you will be scared, you get tunnel vision, and if you don't have a map at that point, you will get lost. We developed a list of top tips to make sure that you do this in the most efficient way, making it easier, faster, and safer to get to your goal. The fifth E. This one is crucial. If you do this, you will blaze through or find your way around any obstacle you may encounter, if there is a way at all. If you don't do this, you will not find the breakthroughs you need, and you will give up before you achieve your goal, because if it is worth doing, it will likely be hard. What do I mean? Execute. Execute with laser-sharp focus. Life is like a maze sometimes. Sometimes you don't really see where you're going. I mean, you have your goal, but you step into a wall and then you turn right and you try to get around the obstacle, you step into a wall again, and then you may have to go backwards, and then you find a wall again, and you go left again, and then you find a wall again, and you keep turning around, and sometimes you even have to backtrack a little bit. But if you keep going, you will get there. And that is what execution means. Execution means you keep going, you keep changing things if you need to change them because your approach doesn't work, and then you try something else, but you always keep going. You keep going until you're either there at the end of your goal, or you know that you cannot possibly achieve it anymore. But you do keep going. The sixth E is what? Evaluate. Evaluate and improve constantly. Why? Your company will only survive with a never-ending improvement. You are unlikely to be perfect on the first try, and if you try to be, you never get started. But knowing this is a cycle will encourage you to try again after a learning experience. It has been the one principle behind Toyota's success, Kaizen, and it has been modeled by many since. Given that jobs will be changing a lot in the future anyway, it's also a great practice for yourself to keep yourself current and employable. And this is not just a must in high-end jobs like lawyers or doctors who need to keep up to date with regulations and current practice, or people in tech who need to keep up to date with current developments. You need to look at the feedback you get in any job nowadays to be successful. And if you stick around with us, you will get some amusing examples out of my life involving the Titanic and a woman called Fluffy. A dancing paper bag also featured in it. This is how this fits together with what we discussed earlier, the 4 vital ingredients for change. Exploration and experimentation give you the information and the intuition you need to make an informed decision. You demonstrate your commitment by educating yourself, and again, these 4 vital ingredients for change were decision, commitment, a plan, and then determination. You engage by making a plan of attack, and you demonstrate your determination by executing and keeping to execute and adjust to whatever feedback you get from the market and your customers or the system you work on, and by evaluating how you're doing, and by then starting the process again of exploring and experimenting of how you can further refine the approach, which again leads to a decision and so on. This approach can also be used for the launch of new products, and our book, So You Need a New Job, Now What?, mentions a few additional techniques that you can use for product launches.